I'm very competitive. I want to win in everything I do. I think that's why I'm in this sport, and that's why I've gotten into Formula One.
Welcome everyone to Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson. The Formula One world descends on Sochi this week for the Russian Grand Prix. So what better time to speak to the country's only current driver on the grid? He's racing for Haas in his debut season, and the man I'm talking about is, of course, Nikita Mazepin. Nikita is a race winner in GP3 and Formula 2, but his early races in Formula 1 were tough, and the gap to teammate Mick Schumacher was bigger than many people expected, myself included. But then a small breakthrough came in Monaco, since when he's been more competitive. But it's all relative. Haas declared before the start of the season that they wouldn't develop their car this year, choosing instead to focus on the new technical regulations in 2022. So Nikita is having to learn his craft at the back of the field, away from the limelight. That has its advantages, of course, but also its frustrations. And Nikita has plenty to learn away from the track as well. Let's not forget that he arrived in Formula One under a dark cloud, after causing outrage on social media last December, following what Haas described as an abhorrent post. We discuss it all, and Nikita is frank throughout. He doesn't shy away from any topic, either on track or off it. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Nikita, it's great to sit down with you and I feel have a proper chat. We're talking at Monza ahead of the Italian Grand Prix. I just wanted to start by asking you about Italy, because you did a lot of karting here. I think you spent a lot of time here now as well. Does this place feel like a second home?
Not really, no. It doesn't feel like that to me. My one and only home, which I'm very rarely at, is Russia. But Italy's been a place where I've been to, I think, the most in my life. I obviously had to move over here at the early age when I started go-karting. And when you're go-karting, there is so many good quality tracks around Italy that you just get to go to all the little towns and cities. I've spent quite a lot of time here. I think it was around age 10. It was a big thing, racing in Russia before and then doing a first international race. I realized how high the level is of the kids, even in the Italian championship. Everyone was so much better than the Russian championship, which I won before coming over. And yeah, it made me realize how difficult life is going to be from now on.
What bit of a wake-up call almost. Okay, I need to raise my game. Is that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, it was very difficult because I was aware, was very young. Everyone else almost didn't speak English and at times looked very unprofessional, like, old go-karts and old stickers and stuff. But the engines and the performance of the kids was just unreal.
And what about moving away from home at the age of 10? How difficult is that?
Well, moving away sort of came a little bit later. I think that was like the first excursion to my race. I took a flight with my, back in the day, Russian coach, flew over, got my ass kicked and flew back. That's how it really was. But I wasn't really allowed to race and train by my dad at the time. I was only allowed to do it when I didn't have school because I couldn't miss it. And in the end, I was only racing from June to August, including. And then I moved over to Italy at around close to being 12 when the decision was taken that, I can actually train and do laps in a van.
But how hard was that? I mean, who came over with you? Did dad, did mum, or were you just thrown out with your coach and away you went?
Yeah, so my Russian coach sort of stepped aside. He was actually the first ever coach of Danny Kvyat. That's how I know him from the age of 12 and 13. We've met. But then he stepped aside and I've been picked up by a guy you probably heard of called Oliver Oakes.
Yeah, sure.
And he had Callum Islet at the time. And then I was his second driver. And no one came over with me. I came over on my own. And I remember I was living for numerous nights in the same hotel room with Callum or with my Irish mechanic or with Ollie. and then my dad would come only to some races. But yeah, mainly it was me and the team.
And all this, I guess, begs the question, why racing for you? Because it seems it was quite a difficult start for you.
It was. My family is by no means connected with racing, but it just happened to be so that I tried that sport, and because my dad had the idea of having to keep the kids busy when they're young, to do school and then sort of to have as little free time as possible.
What, stop you getting into trouble? Is that kind of what Dad was thinking? Or
No, I think it's to challenge yourself as more as possible. So then when you get to the age of 15, you would be ahead of the other kids by, seeing life, seeing the world, and potentially doing some of your skills, not just studying, but doing some sports. And I was doing school, MMA, sports gymnastics, and a little bit of racing. And then eventually racing took over from those, and it was just racing and education.
I'm interested you say gymnastics as well, because having a strong core, does that help your racing somehow?
Well, I'd be lying if I'd said it helps now, because I stopped training like 3 times a week, every week, when I was around 11 or 12. So it was a long time ago. Well, it was half of my life. But
Sebastian Loeb, the world rally champion, he was a very good gymnast as well.
That's cool. I mean, it's a very difficult sport. I know the Olympic Russian athlete in sports gymnastics actually took his first medal in 25 years for Russia a few months back. So,
what were you good at in gymnastics?
Mainly everything to do with strength. I was quite good. I was very quick to build muscles, but I struggled to rotate in the air for as many times as I wanted. So I think my coordination needed some improvements back in the day, but strength exercises on the rings, and I'm not sure in the particular terms.
Are you serious about the rings?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I was okay at like pull-ups and get-ups and stuff like that.
How many pull-ups can you do now?
Now I don't remember. I remember I won a competition when I was at school. I did 29 when I was like 10 or maybe 12. But then I broke my arm and that put me backwards. So I think now I'm around 15.
And MMA, mixed martial arts. Is that a big thing in Moscow? Do a lot of your schoolmates, were they doing that as well?
In Moscow, not so much. We obviously have regions in Russia which are like Chechnya or Dagestan, which that's sort of the only, like that's the main sport, the national sport that they do. And obviously the athletes from those places are surreal. That's the sport that I truly loved since I was a kid, and I still love it now. Like if you give me a free weekend, I will definitely go and watch some of those performances. I think the athletes and how hard they have to push themselves, for me, is really fascinating. And back in the day, or even so now, there was a very famous athlete called Fyodor Yemelyanenko, and my dad took me to one of his fights, and then I met his team, and his sparring partner became my coach, who I'm very good friends with even until today, and we still train together for 12 years now. So yeah, that's one of my definitely most favorite sports.
Is it intimidating when you get in the cage?
Well, I have actually never fought in the cage, so I'd be lying if I said what it feels like, but I don't know. I still have this ambition.
Terrifying.
Yeah, well, the cage is closed, so there's no way to get out of it. I think the cool thing about fighting in a cage is that it's just you and the other person, and the door is shut. Obviously, in my sport, there is big teams behind you. There's cars involved as well, and I think that's the purest sport there is. But then I think when you learn that sport even further, you realize that every sport has its own tricks with gloves and the lubricants to make you slide, etc. So
I sense when talking to you, you are a very proud Russian. Yes, you've lived all over the world, you've worked all over the world. What does Moscow, what does Russia mean to you?
To me personally, it means a lot of things. It wasn't a choice, but I was moved out from home and had very little nights sleeping in my own bed and living in my own house since I was a kid. Made me go out and see a lot of things outside from my country, see loads of different places. Now I'm 22 years of age. I realized that, I truly don't feel anywhere as comfortable as I do being at home. And, home is home. There's no way to replicate it. Of course, for me to grow as an athlete, grow as a Formula One driver, being in Russia is not very useful because there's no tracks, there is no people, there's very little things that you can do. There's no simulators, no teams, but that's the time where I really enjoy to recover, see the people that I enjoy seeing, which are mainly Russian. Yeah, Russia is a very special place to me, and at the same time, being the only Formula One driver from Russia right now is a special thing.
And what about this weekend's Russian Grand Prix? How proud will you be to be lining up on the grid?
I'll be very proud, but at the same time, I think it's the position that we'll be in is probably not going to be as far as I want it to be up the grid. But I think Russia is a country of opportunities, and I think every year you start to see that there is more and more athletes coming on top of some of the sports which weren't famous. And when I started racing, autosport in Russia, was dead. There was no such thing as karting or even formulas. Nobody really knew about it, only certain groups of people. And if you see how far the whole sport has come along in the last 15 years, we are hosting one of the most beautiful Grand Prix, in my opinion, if not the best, every year now. And obviously we're going to move to a new place in 2023. So I think there's loads of opportunities, and hopefully I'll be on the grid every year for those.
For this short ad break, we want you to take a break. Unclench your jaw, relax your shoulders, and take a deep breath. Because sometimes we all need a reminder to take a little time for ourselves. I know I do. And Calm is here to help. At Beyond the Grid, we're delighted to be partnering with Calm, the #1 mental wellness app, to give you the tools that improve the way you feel. New content is added every week to help you clear your head with guided daily meditations. Or if sleep is something you're struggling with, and that'll probably be me in a few weeks' time with all the long-haul races coming up, then Calm's imaginative sleep stories can help you drift off in no time. I love their curated music and soundscapes. They have music to help you de-stress and focus, or simply relax and fall asleep. More than 100 million people around the world use Calm to take care of their minds. So why not see if they can help you take care of yours? Sleep more, stress less, live better with Calm. For listeners of the show, Calm is offering a special limited time promotion of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/grid. Go to Calm, that's CALM.com/grid for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/grid. Let's talk about this season now. We're halfway through. Are you feeling at home in Formula One now?
I don't feel at home yet, to be very, very honest. I mean, it's a huge step up, and I've heard people say that there's two big career moves for a driver. It's the karting to formulas, and then there's Formula 2 to Formula 1, or whichever series to Formula 1. And I always didn't really understand, what it actually means. But I think being in that position, you totally realize, the pace of your life in Formula 1 changes completely from being in Formula 2 for me last year. Ever since you start your day in Thursday, the weekend flies by. There's no time to get distracted, and I think it makes you a completely different human being in terms of the operational pace that you will be performing at.
So when you say it's a huge step up, it's that aspect of it, the pace of your life rather than the driving of the car. Is that what you're saying?
It's both. I mean, what it feels to me in Formula 1 is that there is no bad drivers here, and I think to be successful in Formula 1, you need to let the driving come naturally to you, and it should naturally come to a very top level, because there's so many other things you need to be taken care of, such as, starting from making sure you get a clean lap, and finishing, you use the most from the people around you, which is a very big team who can, make you have the best setup or the worst setup for you.
What were you expecting?
I am not a big fan of expectations, because you often expect something and then you'll be disappointed when things that you've expected didn't come to reality. So I didn't really expect anything apart from, the beginning of the year didn't come very natural to me.
What aspect of it? The driving we're talking about here, or?
Well, there was a lot of aspects. One of them was I think we've talked enough about it, but the chassis situation I've ended up in.
There'll be a lot of people listening to this who won't know that story. So you've ended up driving a chassis that's heavier than your teammates. How come?
I mean, the story starts way before that. Obviously, F1 teams, to save costs, they bring only one chassis to a test. And because of the horrible incident that happened to Roman last year in Bahrain, they would have carried over 2 old chassis. But because of what happened, one chassis was burned and Kevin's chassis was going ahead. The new chassis had to be ordered because they didn't have the car for the second driver. And we've tested both with my teammate the same chassis in Bahrain, testing which, felt very normal. But ever since I've received the old chassis from the year before.
So you're in Kevin, or were in Kevin's chassis?
I was from free practice 1 in Bahrain. It just didn't feel normal. And, there's no scientific proof of it, but it didn't feel normal to me. And I really couldn't drive it. The car just snapped at various times and it was very, very difficult to catch it. There was no confidence in it. So, I've gotten a sequence of very difficult races where we needed time to figure it out. And eventually we've swapped chassis for the first time in Monaco. And I think it was visible that my old chassis isn't as good as everybody thought, apart from me. And then we've taken that chassis away, but we had the third chassis, which was obviously quite a lot heavier. But I preferred running it because the feeling of it at least was fine, apart from the, physical reasons why it's just slower for a certain amount of time over a lap.
And so the new chassis came on in Belgium.
Yep.
And does it feel like a different car now?
Well, it doesn't, because ever since Monaco, I've used the heavier chassis, which, felt completely normal, but just was heavy. So the new chassis doesn't feel any different, but it's just quicker because it's lighter. The setup didn't change, nothing changed, and I'm really struggling to explain, the reasons why it felt like that. But, I've been driving for the biggest part of my life, and where the instincts come from. Sometimes it feels right and sometimes it doesn't, and then it just didn't.
Did you ever reach out to Kevin and ask him about it?
No, I didn't, because I think that anything new in Formula One is better than old. That's not only in Formula One, but any automotive parts, they wear out. And obviously his chassis was new in the beginning of the year, and they both got older as the season progressed. He did 22 races in it. So I haven't actually met Kevin or Roman ever in my life. So yeah, there wasn't any opportunity to reach out to each other.
Did Roman drop by at the Belgian Grand Prix?
I think he did, but I haven't managed to catch
Ships
him.
in the night, you were doing something else. Look, Nikita, tell me, what is your greatest strength as a driver?
As a driver, I'd struggle to say, because I think every driver is a human being. And I think as a human being, one of the strengths that I believe I have is I can get annoyed when things don't go well quite fast, but naturally I want to give up and I don't want to do it again because it just feels bad. But the phase of me to take and come over it is very fast, like even in some exercises and games with my trainer that we usually play with, I'm very competitive. I want to win in everything I do. I think that's why I'm in this sport, and that's why I've gotten to Formula One. Yeah, I'm very quickly to overcome the difficult parts, and very quickly from not wanting to do it, I really want to get and try it again.
So is it a love of driving or a love of competition for you?
I wouldn't say I've got a love for driving, I obviously love what I do, but that's not, like for me, this sport isn't fun, it's a job that is very rewarding, and it's just fantastic to be able to grow as a human being, as an athlete in a certain direction, and get quicker and quicker every year and improve your driving skills and get better with every free practice or every lap that you do. But fun of driving is buggying on a weekend with my friends outside of Moscow somewhere. where if you flip, you flip. There's no,
Oh, God.
there's no thousands of people who are waking up, leaving their homes with families and going to work to make sure that you get the fastest car possible, and then you compete. You're not letting anyone down. That's fun.
So
Quad
what, the
biking.
pressure of Formula One takes some of the joy out of it for you?
For me personally, yes. Everybody says, and it's total truth, that you need to focus on enjoying it. But the reason why so many great Formula One drivers have said it as their advice is because there's so much arousal around the sport that you as a driver very often forget to actually enjoy it. And I think it's a very difficult balance, because if you enjoy it too much, then you're not applying yourself to the maximum. I'm a very strong believer of, when you're doing 101% of your abilities, it cannot be fun. It's impossible. It's like in any other sports the same.
But do you not think when you're enjoying something, it comes a little bit easier to you? You
But
can
it's like,
overthink this sport.
yeah, but it's like a vicious circle. Where do you start enjoying and applying yourself to the most? I think that, for some people it works better than others, but my psychology as a person works probably slightly different.
David Coulthard once told me that he'd do the driving bit for free. What he was getting paid for was bits like this, actually, the media and the sponsor work and all that kind of thing. You can't relate to that. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's probably, yeah, I think it's maybe the older generation of drivers, or maybe it's just a different mentality I'd love to relate to, but I'm here to tell you the truth, and that's not really the truth.
Let's throw it back to 2019, where you tested the Mercedes. In a car that good, does it then become fun?
Yeah, that day was pure fun, because there was no expectations really from outside people. Of course, I wanted to get the most of it, because I knew that I might not ever in my life, get that chance again. But that car just gave you so much confidence and consistency and, stability in driving that.
I can see it still puts a smile on your
Yeah,
face now.
because obviously I'm having a very different year and a different car to drive, and I still very well remember what it feels like to return 3 and 4 and 5 in Barcelona, which were a completely different feeling this year when I raced. And it just comes natural to you. I know how to make the car go fast as much as every other driver does, but that car just did what you asked it to do, and it gave you so much indication if it's gonna oversteer and step out that you, could plan ahead. It was a huge step up. Obviously, I've tested for Force India in the previous years, and as you know, Formula One gets faster and faster every year. I mean, not this year because of the regulation change, but 2018 to 2019 cars was a big improvement, and Force India was a different car to drive in Hungary.
Can we talk about Mick now? You've had some near misses. What's going on there between you two?
There's a lot going on, a lot and nothing at the same time. I think it's just two young drivers who are willing to get to the top of Formula One, and who've been put in a difficult position where realistically, as the year goes on, more and more we can fight with each other only. And, for me, finishing P19 can be a highlight, and finishing P20 can be a very bad point of the weekend. And, obviously in any other category, what's the difference between P19 and P20? But because it's like all or nothing, I think that potentially impacts his approach to me. But yeah, I'd struggle to say more than that. It is what it is, and I don't know how many years we've got left together, but I don't think it's going to be a smooth ride.
It seems really sad because you two have known each other for so long. You were karting teammates. I know that Michael Schumacher was a bit of a hero. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but you certainly looked up to Michael, didn't you? It seems very sad that relations have broken down to the extent that they have.
Well, I wouldn't really relate to that. I think that the way I see the sport and anything you do is, you obviously have your personality, which is outside of the circuit, and then you have your competitive personality, which often is not the nicest, but it ultimately makes you work harder, get through difficult moments, and win at times. And in regards to Michael, I have no shame in saying that I was racing for quite a long time with a white helmet until my dad gave me for my birthday the replica of Michael's helmet back in the day, and I think it was 2005 or six, and I was proudly wearing it until a point where I think a screw in my visor stopped going in because it was just too old, and it obviously didn't take a long time with the Russian conditions in the weather. But then I met Mick later in my life, racing with him and karting, and it was the same. I mean, people don't remember, but it wasn't a smooth ride even then. I wanted to get to Formula One and win races, and so did he. And sometimes it was easier, sometimes it was more difficult, and sometimes we had tough moments. And even so now, I like Mick to the bottom of my heart. I think he's a super talented kid who's done an incredible achievement in his career. But that's outside of the circuit. On the track, I don't really care who I'm racing with. I'm racing against a competitor car, and that is the only car at the moment in the last few races that I was able to get in front. So on a personal level, it really doesn't impact.
Nikita, do you guys need to keep a lid on it? Otherwise, is this going to end in an accident, and who knows what might happen after that?
I have a strong feeling everything's going to be fine.
Tell me more.
I've got confidence that, we've obviously got media and there are external factors, why this competition is interesting for people. But everything I do within the rules, and I'm confident that there will not be any big issues.
What's Gunther told you guys? Gunther Steiner, your boss?
Well, he mainly told us that, it's obviously stressful from the point of view where he sits. I think when you're watching TV, you probably get a completely different feel. But I think when you're behind the steering wheel, you feel a lot more in control of the situation. And I think he just wants the best for the team. For him, it really doesn't matter who's in front, as long as, when the times come for the team to be able to achieve points, we get every single point possible and every single point that's not possible, for the team to allow the team to grow and bring it back to where it was when it first came to Formula One. I think that's his only priority.
And next year, if you have a more competitive car, do you and Mick both understand that you have to work together to drive the whole team forward?
Well, we drive the team forward even
now. Okay.
I have a very good relationship with his team. I really like his engineer, Gary. I think he's a really cool guy, very experienced. And Ed, his performance engineer, I'm very good friends with the whole of his team, and his mechanics are super cool, very easy to get on with. So I'm doing my absolute best to be positive in the team. And, there's times when it's difficult being over and over and over again in P20, P19. But every single bit of positivity I can bring to the table when we're doing debriefs, I'm always trying to give it back to not only my team, but also his team.
The way you talk about P19, P20, yeah, it must get frustrating. I can see that. You're a guy who was winning races last year, and then to suddenly make that jump to the back, albeit in Formula One, takes a little bit of adjusting to, I imagine.
Yeah, I think, the first 4 or 5 races in Formula One were very not smooth for me. There was a lot of new things that you get used to, and being in Formula One just felt super cool, regardless of the finishing positions. And it just felt that I had to put so much together to make my best job possible. But now I feel like I'm at times putting everything together that I can, less often in qualifyings, because qualifyings are way more hectic than when they were in Formula 2. I was watching qualifyings last year in Monza, when people didn't get to do their last attempt, and I was not really understanding what it is. But now I totally understand how big of an issue that is in these cars. And now, knowing that you do your absolute best lap, which I confidently would have been in top 3 last year, sometimes puts you in P20 or P19, as I keep repeating it. It makes you not so happy when you go to sleep at night, because I'm here to do well. I'm not here to complete the grid. I'm here to be in the high end of it. But at the moment, it's not possible, and I just believe with my heart that I will be able to, get a point or something in Formula One. That feels surreal.
Speaking of things that are incredibly frustrating, have you ever risked using your smartphone without a protective case? Most of the time you're fine, aren't you? But we all know that it takes just one accidental drop on the hard concrete to make you regret not protecting your tech. Well, going online without a VPN is like using your phone without a case. It's a risk, because anytime you connect to an unencrypted network, be that in a cafe, hotel, or airport, your online data is not secured, meaning a hacker on the same network can easily access and steal your data, like your passwords or financial information. That's why I like ExpressVPN. It creates a super secure encrypted tunnel between my devices and the internet, so all of my data is instantly protected. Phones, laptops, tablets, you name it, it works on everything. I'll often find myself working from the airport after a busy race weekend, and I'm sure Sochi this weekend will be no different. But with ExpressVPN, I don't have to worry. I just get on with what I need to do, whether it's recording another episode of Beyond the Grid, and no matter where I find myself in the world, I can just get on with it. And the best bit, all I have to do is fire up the app, click on one button, and I'm protected. It couldn't be simpler. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/grid. That's ExpressVPN, expressvpn.com/grid, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/grid. Winding it even further forward, Nikita, what do you think you can achieve in this sport? You've driven that Mercedes 2 years ago. You know what the best machinery feels like. You know what your rate of development has been this year. Do you think that in the right machinery, you can win the World Championship?
Yes, I do, because otherwise, why would I be here? I mean, there's loads of people who haven't believed in me when I was in go-karting. Then those people changed and they didn't believe in me in cars. And then they didn't believe I'll get to Formula One. But, I've completed my FIA points system. I've achieved them by racing on track and finishing in high positions. I didn't get here through, a chance. Back in the day, it was possible. Now, FIA has changed the system and it's not possible, and it's much more demanding than what it used to be. So I really believe that is possible. I also believe that I progress massively from my first years. If you look at the record of me racing in the past, my second year and third year in the same series, when I get comfortable, when I find the right environment for me, which is a special environment that other drivers don't need, I can get and I can be faster than those people.
I'm getting the impression that you're quite stubborn. In junior formulas, you were saying people didn't believe in you. And I think you're the sort of person who wants to prove people wrong. Is that part of the motivation?
Totally not, because there's so many people out there. And if I wanted to prove them wrong, I'm a very big believer that every human has a certain amount of energy, which he can use in any direction he wants. And if you direct your energy to proving people wrong, you might be proving people wrong, but that doesn't have anything together with your results, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to direct my energy towards my team to get the best environment for me, which is, a special car with a special setup. I like a consistent car with a stable rear, with little oversteer. Other people don't. So my biggest priority is to make sure that I'm extracting the most from my team. And the outside bit, I believe, will come naturally.
Do you think Haas can give you what you need going forward?
I'm sure they can. I think in every team in Formula One, there is only the best, the cleverest engineers and the best people there are in this sport. And Haas has everything that I need, but we just need time to learn each other. And if you look at the steps we've made forward and how much more positive even this mid-season part is looking versus where we started, we've come such a long way. And as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I have time.
Can we talk a little bit more about your old man, Dmitry? What kind of an influence has he had on you?
Well, his influence really changed in the last 10 years. I think it's very important to say that I've had more than, I think, 500 races in my life, and he's probably missed 10 or 12. So that just puts it into numbers, how much of his personal time, of his life, and his attention was spent with me. And I'm very proud of it. I'm very happy of it. But he's been very, very intense with me from karting until Formula 3, including. And he was the first person always to tell me that, if I'm not able or not interested to take it further in the sport, there's always a way to go back to university full time, instead of doing everything over Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and, take the normal life and then go to work in business. But that's been always my passion, and I really admire that he's supported me all the way, and he helped me to be here with his time, with his advices, purely based on me willing to be, a Formula One driver, and eventually, hopefully, becoming on the top step on the podium in that sport.
What's the best bit of advice he's given you?
It's difficult to say. You're putting pressure on me here.
The reason I'm fascinated is that he doesn't have a history in motorsport. And this business is unlike any other business. So hence, I'm fascinated to know what kind of advice he has given you.
Well, the reason why I said you're putting pressure on me here is because I don't remember a day when we haven't spoke in the last many, many years. And either I text him first or he texts me first every day of my life. And obviously we speak about a lot of things, and sport and personal things and business, etc. But I think his best advices to me have been with things to do, how to work in a team. He obviously doesn't know how to put a very quick lap together. He probably does now after so many years by my side, but his main talent, in my point of view, is how good of a team he's built around himself. And all of his team has been with him for over 20 years. Some of the people have been with him in university back in the day. Some were with him in the war in Afghanistan. So I think loyalty, how to make sure that everybody's going towards the same goal, even through difficult times when people fall out and have arguments, and how to never give up. That's the best things that he showed me.
Did he ever encourage you to follow him into the military?
Technically, I am doing a military service right now. In Russia.
Not like right now.
Like right now. As in the time of my life. Obviously.
National service?
Yeah. There's mandatory military service in Russia. And if you're in university, you can either do it through like the elite forces, which is mainly based on studying, or you can go to army for a full year after you finish your studies. But because I've luckily managed to get in there with passing through my fitness tests and fitness numbers and running pull-ups, push-ups, etc., and also my educational marks, I was able to get into elite services, and that's the service that I'm doing right now. And to be honest, I'm probably gonna get in some trouble for speaking about it. You can't really go into details, but yeah, I'm obeying to the whole rules of Russia in that case.
Has your dad spoken to you about his time in Afghanistan?
Very briefly.
What's he said?
Well, loads of things, to be honest. But one of the most impressive things is that he was a translator there, and he today speaks 5 or 6 languages, I'm not sure. And very difficult ones like Farsi and etc. So yeah, the most impressive thing was when he told me that it took them around 4 or 5 months to learn a language in university from zero to being able to translate, which, I'm trying to learn Italian for a good few months now, and it just makes me feel a bit of a shame.
How many languages can you speak?
I can speak Russian, English, obviously, and I'm making my steps in Italian, but I'm a very good understander, but I struggle to speak at the moment.
Your father's been very successful. How has his wealth helped your path in racing?
It's a difficult question. Well, first of all, I'm a big believer that you are who you spend time with. I look at his success in a very positive way because I lived in the same house for many, many years. With him, we've had so many breakfasts, lunch, and dinners. And when I'm next to him, I'm obviously learning from him and looking up to him in his successful mindset, because there is something different about him and other people because of what he achieved. And he was born in a very poor family, first of all. So I think it opened up different opportunities for me. And it also allowed me to possibly try a very different route to what a Russian boy would normally acquire. Normally you go to school, then university, and then you go to work in a company and try to make a living out of it. But because my dad has made it, it opened up opportunities for me to have the sporty background since I was a kid. I was able to try loads of things, like I said, gymnastics and other sports. Then when I got to race, I was also able to continue my studies because we could afford teachers via Skype and Zoom, which helped me not drop out of school because I still turned up for the same exams, but I was able to have the people help me and prepare. And obviously it's more work. I would have loved to go to sleep at night a little bit earlier or watch Netflix, but I had to catch up on maths or Russian languages or linguistics when I was 12. And we had quite a few arguments about that because I said, nobody else studies or very little people study. Why do I have to do it? But the older I get, the more I'm appreciating him being very direct with me that there's either we're studying and racing or there is no racing.
How has money changed your dad, do you think?
It's too early for me to speak. I'm 22 years of age.
Does he talk about it? You say he came from a poor family, so...
I think he's one of the more normal people that you will see. Money for him means opportunities, but it doesn't mean the financial stubbornness, if that makes sense. He's still very precise with money, and the way he behaves, he acts like a very good human being. Even more so, in Russia, the mentality is that, your dad is always right. In every well-mannered family, dad is the boss of the family. So I'm not very comfortable, just speaking like that on his behalf.
Your dad will listen to this. Will he be smiling right now to hear you saying dad's always right?
I hope he will, unless I would already get in trouble beforehand if I said something wrong.
What do you make of Lewis Hamilton's claim that Formula One is becoming a billionaire boys club?
I totally understand where this is coming from Lewis. I think he's an exceptional man, and I feel very fortunate to have met him and, exchanged a few words and shook his hand because, even before I got to Formula One, he was a very special figure for me that I looked up to. Where he's come from and, with his background, it was even more difficult to make it to Formula One back in the day.
Is he right?
I don't think that is what's happening right now. I think we could be living in a special times where back in the day, loads of young drivers were supported by junior academies of car brands, energy drinks, and the number can go on. I think in my shoes, what I see is that it's important to look at success in not a negative way, but I think it is, if you look at myself and my dad, I think it's a beautiful story of my dad supporting me in my ambitions and helping me to master myself and get better. And I think it's a beautiful project that we've started with him when I was 7. He was driving me to the racetrack when I was young outside of Moscow every morning, wasting his weekend when he could have done something else. And he's spent so many weekends racing with me. And I think it's a project that hopefully will go on even beyond Formula One. I think, and I'm hoping that we will do something outside of the sport as well later on in my life.
So, Nikita, are you saying that you think your circumstances are no different to another driver like Lewis, who was on a young driver program? He was with Mercedes. Obviously, there are all the Red Bull guys coming through. You mentioned them. Are you seeing a similarity? Do you think your circumstances are no different to theirs?
No, I'm not seeing it. And I would like to be very direct that our life in coming to Formula One is very different. I mean, different even that you have to remember that the world when he was becoming a Formula One driver was very different back in the day than when we're living now. And of course, to be picked up by a junior academy, you need to be very special with loads of talent. And I think that being helped by your father since I was a kid to encourage me when I had difficult moments in my time and saying, it's going to be hopefully okay one day is very special. But in the way of becoming a Formula One driver and the current system of the points that you need to acquire to get the license, I think in that respect it is no different because, I didn't just finish school and decided I want to race in Formula One. I wasted a lot of free time to think about this sport. I've started driving when I was 5. I moved away from home and didn't see my family. And I've done loads of sacrifices, which every other driver on the grid has done as well, in a very, very similar way. So I think we all deserve to be here. And the other drivers that I think this statement's referring to, they all won numerous Formula Series championships and have proved themselves to be the same or even better at times than the junior drivers from Mercedes or Sauber or Ferrari. So I think just because that could be an easy target to pick up on, I don't think it's factually correct.
This seems like a good point for me to give you another gentle reminder for your F1 diaries that you don't want to miss. Expo 2020 Dubai and Formula One are thrilled to invite you to join the making of a new world. Kicking off on the 1st of October 2021, Expo 2020 brings you 182 days of what's next in art, music, food and tech, a global gathering dedicated to bringing together people, communities and nations. It will build bridges, inspire action and deliver real-life solutions to real-life challenges. There will be something for everyone to enjoy. Techies will be able to experience the possibilities of a truly connected high-tech world, from autonomous vehicles to space travel, as they witness the latest innovations and breakthroughs and take a glimpse into the future. Entertainment fans will be wowed with up to 60 live shows each and every day. And foodies will be pleased to know that there will be cuisines on offer from every corner of the world. World Expos are a global celebration, and this is the first time it will be hosted in the Middle East, Africa and South Asia region. So make sure you don't miss it. Join the making of a new world. To plan your experience, visit expo2020dubai.com. You've mentioned Lewis. Who else do you hang out with on the grid?
I don't hang out with Lewis.
No, not implying you hang out with Lewis, but you say you've met him. And when you're on the drivers' parade, do you have any mates on the grid yet? Or 6 months in, is it still too early?
Well, I'm in a good relationship with quite a lot of drivers, but I have never in my life had friends, in the paddock, whether that was karting, whether that
Rivalry's too intense. Is that what you're going to tell me?
No, I just think I struggle to find people who think in the same way as me, that, what we do in the paddock and on the racetrack is nothing personal. We are just trying to make the best job we can. We are just trying to become very good athletes and Formula One drivers and just trying to make a living out of it. Nevertheless, regardless of the incidents or tough moments we can have on track, for me, those people are exactly the same outside of the track. They're the same cool guys who've achieved a lot in their life. I don't take it personal when I leave the circuit, and I haven't found many people who thought the same way. And I have the people who've been with me since I was at school, who I call friends, and I'm very fortunate to have them. And I just like my own little group, from back in the day, where I can be myself, and I don't need to be worried on how I will be perceived.
What about the other Russian Formula One drivers that we've had in recent years? I'm thinking Vitaly Petrov, Sergei Sorokin, Danny Kvyat. You said you share a coach, or you shared a coach with Danny. Do you engage with those guys at all?
Well, each of them is living a very different life after they have finished their career in Formula One. Obviously, Vitaly was the breakthrough. He was the first driver, and I remember that was such a big thing, for my country, or maybe just for me. I don't know, but I was obviously aiming to get to Formula One, and him breaking the ice through was a big day. And I remember racing in Castelletto when he claimed his first podium in Australia. I have loads of very warm feelings for him. I've spoken to him many times. Same with Danny. And I've actually never really spoken to Sergey, but they're all great guys, great drivers.
And Robert Schwartzman, young guy coming through?
Yeah, so actually with Robert, I remember now we had 2 back-to-back races in Italy, and he was living with his family because his family moved abroad for him when he started racing. And I remember sleeping in his house, or maybe even sharing a room and hanging out. We were just, 10 years old. I know him quite well, but I think when you get up the ladder and your team around you grows, you distance yourself from the other drivers, because there's just not as much time. But he's the guy I've known the closest out of all for so many years. And I'm hoping that we'll race together again one day.
In Formula One?
Why not? If there will be an opportunity like that, I'll be very happy to take it.
Nikita, I do want to ask you about something that happened last December when you posted what your team has called an abhorrent video on social media.
I haven't posted it, and I've said it numerous times that it wasn't my hands who have happened to upload that video. But it's been a very dark day for me. I remember now, I think it was 9th of December. And as the time goes by, I look at it as an opportunity on, learning further on how I should behave, learning further on, how I can improve as a human being, and looking at it on how I can actually make the most to make it a better place for me, to improve in general.
What was your reaction to the reaction to that post?
Totally expected.
And a year on, what did you learn? How do you reflect on it now?
That incident has happened 8 days after I was announced as a Formula One driver. And I think one of my biggest strength and in this incident came out as a weakness is when I was a go-kart driver and going to school, I felt one way about myself, and the way I felt about myself and the way I felt other people feel about me, it has never really changed. I was the same me from back in the day, and I just happened to be signed for a Formula One team. But what I clearly was not realizing and I was missing is that I am now a driver in the eyes of a lot of people and the kids that are looking up to. And there's a certain conduct and a behavior that you have to bring with yourself when you sign that contract. And I just thought, I'm just the same guy, no different. And obviously you have to change the way you behave. And it was a very big wake-up call.
Do you feel you arrived in Formula One under a big cloud?
Bahrain was a difficult race for very many reasons. That didn't help at all. But at the same time, this sport was so many complexities into it, and the speed that we're traveling at, when the visor is down, regardless of the situation that happened, there's no mental capacity to think about the outside things. So it wasn't easy, but I don't think it really impacted me.
I'm interested to hear you say you think it didn't impact you, because Bahrain wasn't a great weekend. When you look back, do you think it did all get to you? Is that one of the reasons why it was a difficult weekend on track?
I think it was a difficult weekend on track, mainly because I've showed some very good pace and built up to the confidence of the car that I had in testing. And I was unaware that the car that I'm going out in FP1 is not the same car. And it felt wrong, but I didn't know what's wrong and I didn't know what's different. And then that combined with that being my first ever outing in a Formula One weekend, with the first qualifying, which was very hectic, and the balance which I didn't feel comfortable at and was barely trying to keep it out the wall, and the pressure and the negativity outside, I think that in a combined environment made it very difficult.
Well, look, let's end by throwing it forward. Maybe I'll be caught out and that you'll score some points between now and the end of this year, but it's looking difficult. So let's throw it forward to 2022 when we've got the rule changes coming. You've got your feet under the table at Haas. You've got a year's experience in Formula One. What are your goals for next year?
The goals in Formula One are very difficult to be set using numbers, because I believe that ultimately, the numbers are dependent on so many factors, and some of them are, how well your competitors design the car, how competitive your car is towards the other cars on the grid, and the biggest benchmark is yourself, and that's the only way that I feel right now that you can look at and not get lost, and use that as a sustainable marker to know where you stand. And therefore, I know a lot of areas which I'm not happy with myself this year as a racing driver.
What areas do you think you've got to improve in as a racing driver?
Well, I'm not going to tell you them because I'm sure somebody will listen to it and use it in a way to get themselves better. So
but when you look
keep
at the
private
data, Nikita, and you're comparing yourself to Mick, is there any particular area that stands out where equally you're good versus equally where you're bad?
It seems to me right now that I take more time than I would like to build up the minimum speed in high speed corners. That seems to be the biggest feeling right now. And the other one is, I believe I've got a very good feel of what the car is doing underneath me, and perhaps that feel sometimes doesn't let me go quick enough when I'm not 100% happy with the balance. I don't take it as far as I should do because the car will allow it. Yeah, being more instinctive and taking perhaps more risk is what I'm feeling right now, and you probably will smile when I say take more risk based on a few incidents and crashes that I've had in the beginning of the year, but I think maybe that brought me slightly too much backwards, so I need to find a middle line.
And how excited are you about next year's car? What has Simone Resta told you about it?
Told me not so much, showed me quite a few things. It's exciting to be in the project, for at least 2 years, in a growing project that is bringing out opportunities to me, to experience, what it's like to finish in top 10 on pure pace. Because at the moment, as sad as it sounds, for us to move up places, we need other cars not to finish, which is, a horrible way of looking at it. I'm very excited because it could be a whole different world of what Formula One feels like. And I'm actually thinking back to what you said about the words of David. And I think that what I've said earlier to you is mainly to do with that, me or my teammate are lucky if we get 2 or 3 overtakes done in a weekend. And that's ultimately what gives you that feeling of you're racing, not when you're driving laps and laps and laps. So I think hopefully if we sit down with you in 12 or 24 months, I'll tell you that I'm getting paid the money for this, and then that's just pure driving and fun.
And that's a great way to end it. Nikita, thank you very much for your time. Really enjoyed chatting to you.
Thank you.
During that chat with Nikita, I learnt a lot about him, about his background and about his father Dmitry, who's missed only a handful of Nikita's 500 or so races. They contact each other every day, and so clearly they're very close. And what Nikita said about teammate Mick Schumacher was fascinating as well, and I'm sure everyone at Haas will be relieved to hear that Nikita thinks everything will be fine between them. Nikita, many thanks for your time, and good luck for the remainder of the season. As ever, please send in any stories or thoughts that you have on Nikita, and remember, I'll read out the best ones next week, so send them to me at Tom Clarkson F1 or use the hashtag F1BeyondTheGrid. Which brings me on to what you sent in about Jackie Oliver after last week's show. What a man! As he himself summed up so beautifully, he survived being both a racing driver in the 60s and a team owner after that, and that's something to be proud of. Macca got in touch with this. The Jackie Oliver chat was great. I remember seeing the UOP Shadow from Corgi Toys, and remember the team was based in my hometown of Northampton. We made so many of those cars at Metoy, and it started my F1 passion. What a lovely story. And Macca even sent me a picture of one of the toy shadows. Thank you. And Phil Turner got in touch with this. Jackie Oliver, great guest. I always felt that if Patrese had landed one of those early wins he probably deserved, the Arrow story would almost certainly have panned out differently. That's a good point, Phil, and thanks for getting in touch. Imagine the momentum that the team would have built up had they won as you suggest. Sadly, we'll never know. And Underbird said simply this: thank you for another great interview with a Grand Prix great. I'll second that. Jackie Oliver is a Grand Prix great for many reasons. And let's move on now to Mark Neeson, who said this. Another really interesting guest for Beyond the Grid. The story of the original Spygate with Tony Southgate and his shadow drawings right through until Jackie did business with Tom Walkinshaw, who brought Damon Hill to the Arrows Formula One team. It was a brilliant listen. Well, thank you, Mark. And yes, the original Spygate story was jaw-dropping in its magnitude. And as I said last week, the fact that Jackie continued in his pursuit of having his own Formula One team after that was a true credit to him. I could read out lots more messages, but we'll leave it there for now. And thank you to everyone who wrote in. We love hearing what you have to say. We love it. I'll be back next week with another great guest from the world of Formula One. So see you then. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.